Welcome. Welcome to sharing the three principles with Jim Beck. This is your host and your friend, Karan Detani. And I want to welcome you to this amazing webinar with Jim Beck, where we will be sharing the three principles. And this is episode number 2, Sharing Consciousness. All right, so before we start, I want to say thank you to all for coming here, for being here, and for bringing your joyful, blissful, and delightful presence here. With your beautiful presence, this show shines more than the beauty of the sun. And heartfelt gratitude being expressed here, saying thank you to you. Thank you very much. And now I would like to ask Jim to come and start the show. So ladies and gentlemen, here I present to you the speaker of the show, Jim Beck. Hello, Jim. Welcome.
Thanks, Karan. And thanks for all your work on getting this particular episode together. It's really exciting. I've had some great feedback on Dreama's clip that we put on Facebook. Great response. Many of the people that work with her have, weighed in on it, and they're also happy that I am sharing Dreama's tape. So that's going to be a highlight for us today. It's a great episode. About 8-9 minutes long, but it's on a personal level. So we are really going to benefit from sharing what Dreama has to say. Today, our topic is consciousness. And well, as Dreama said on the last part of her tape that we shared, it's the gift of awareness. And an incredible gift it is. It's really key to explaining life, to explaining things like why we're here, where were we before we came, where do we go when we leave, the universal questions of life. By universal, I mean, I can't conceive of a human not wondering the answers to these. It's common. There's a oneness about the questions that it answers for us. Consciousness relates to our understanding of the three principles. It's a flowing process, moment to moment, thought to thought. Sid referred to it as levels of consciousness. And that phrase really helps us understand what he meant. The first night that I met Sid, there was a lot of, he was sharing about his experience and various things. And for myself, I was pretty confused. I had never heard of the term enlightenment. And so I had to try and get my head around that. And then at one point, Sid says, well, and then there's levels of consciousness. And then he stopped very quickly. He says, no, that's for later. I don't know. I don't think it's ready to. I'm ready to, do it now. And I immediately, of course, what? Something that I might not get. No, I said, no. Tell me about levels of consciousness. I want to hear it, And so there was some explaining about it, but he's explained it many times. He had since, and. How many levels of consciousness are there? Well, it's an unfathomable amount. How many humans are there? Every one of them is in a different level of consciousness at any given time. So we have the number of people there are. Then how many people have been here? How many people have lived already? they're all unique levels of consciousness, and they're always changing. And how fast do they change? Well, as I said, it can be thought to thought, virtually. So, it's an infinite number of levels of consciousness. And we gravitate up and down. We have our highest level, and whatever we've achieved, experienced during our living, that has brought joy and love to us. Those are up into the higher areas of our level of consciousness, and our lowest level is, are the dark moments, the levels of anger, the levels of insecurity and fear. That's our lower level of consciousness, and we are anywhere in between, and the sky's the limit pretty much in either way. But our natural tendency is to grow in consciousness. So the question, why am I here, has a simple answer. I'm here to grow in consciousness. That's what we are all here for, is to grow in consciousness, to grow in our level of awareness. We came here, where were we before we came? We were in the formless. That, I don't remember it. None of us do. But an enlightened being does. So we came out of the formless, and when we came out of the formless and were born, we were born at a certain level of consciousness. That's our level of consciousness at that time. What is it? Where is it? It's in the place that we were in our last lifetime. That's the level of consciousness we entered this realm at. And what is our goal? Why are we here? Well, we're here to grow in consciousness. And when we leave, our level of consciousness will be higher, more love, than when we entered. And it carries on lifetime after lifetime. When we come back, we will be at the level that we left, and we carry on our journey of life. And the journey of life is the one that takes us towards our ultimate goal, enlightenment. We are all headed for enlightenment. We're all living in enlightenment anyway. We don't realize it. No, I can't get my head around that. But those are the words of truth. So that's the journey. That's why we're here. Anything else is secondary. Unfortunately, the vast majority of us don't understand that, haven't learned that, aren't aware of that, aren't conscious of that fact. Becoming conscious of that fact in and of itself raises one's level of consciousness. Being aware of what we're really doing here and how we recognize. That's the journey. That's life's journey. And time seems to be irrelevant. In a lifetime, some of us are only going to learn a little bit. Others of us are going to accelerate lifetimes ahead, jumping time. With the right insights. Every time we get an insight, our consciousness grows. We reaffirm that there is mind. And that's the guide, our inner voice. And here's another point. Accessing a state of meditation. Getting into a meditative state. The techniques not that successful. You just go quiet. You embrace the quiet. You love the quiet. Because in those quiet is when you're accessing mind. And you're growing in consciousness when you access mind. There's a story about Sid. In the very early days, the first time he went to a university, UBC, Barb and him, they were invited to address the faculty in the psychology department. It was I believe it was a luncheon in the faculty lounge. And he was received with respect. And they were listening to what he had to say. But they were still at the level of listening to words. They had their thoughts going. And of course, the thoughts were, I would predict, were, this guy has no credentials. How can he come into a university? Polite, respectful, and reserved. But as a kind of collateral event, one of these psychologists was doing research in a certain way, and he invited Sid to come back, and asked him if he would participate with his fellow's project, and Sid agreed, and Barb and him came back. And what it was he had some kind of equipment that he hooked up onto your head. Maybe it's an electroencephalogram or something like that measures the brain waves and measures brain activity, and associating it, just actually making measurements is what the guy was doing. So what he had was a silent room, totally silent. And then he had a little control room that he could look through the windows, and he had the equipment there. And so Barb and the professor were in the control room, and Sid was in the quiet room. So they started the clock. And so far, nobody had been able to stand it over 3 minutes to be quiet in the quiet room. They had to talk. They had to have sound. They couldn't be still. Their brains would not quiet down. After about 15 minutes in there, Sid fell asleep. So the guy, he had to he made noise, yelled at him or did something and woke him up again. And of course, his measurement chart jumped with having been awakened. And I don't know what the conversation was, but the thing that was amazing to this guy as well was the fact that he quieted down. Sid quieted down right away again in the silent room. He was in a meditative state. This guy commented after they came out that he had only heard of one other person that had lasted over the 3 minutes even. And it was a guru from India, and I don't know where he was measured or any of the details about that. But that was pretty well the end of that event. He was thrilled with what he saw and what he got from Sid, the uniqueness of it, exceptional uniqueness of it. And he handed Sid, and Sid thought this was amazing because they actually had some kind of scientific research regarding the exceptionality of what had been measured from this former welder who had an experience. So the guy handed Sid the chart. He says, "Here, you can take this home with you." Well, Sid said, "What am I going to do with it?" And the guy said, "Well, you can put it on your wall." Well, Sid had no interest in that. Here, the guy had some scientific evidence that could be beneficial and make some point to his investigation. And he didn't see it. So Sid was pretty much realized that UBC was not going to be the people that were going to start teaching 3P anytime soon. But what's beautiful about the story is a state of meditation that just happened when the quiet was, when there was no stimulation except that which we create. So consciousness is gained in a state of meditation. Where else do we grow in consciousness? We grow in listening to truth. By listening to truth, we have the opportunity for the metaphors to create that jump into spiritual. And we have an opportunity to experience growing through the spiritual. And when we do that, our level of consciousness increases. We can grow through acts of kindness. We can grow through the feelings of love. We can grow through sharing. Sharing is surefire. You want to increase your consciousness, share truth. You'll be sharing the greatest gift that we can fathom. The gift of love. Love is everything. These days, I have a hard time not talking about love. I love talking about love. I love sharing love. I love sharing the feeling of love. And I say it to you on an impersonal way. I have grown incredibly by sharing the feeling of love, by creating impersonal love, by allowing impersonal love to appear, because it's everywhere. We are it. As Sid would say, the answer is love. It's always only ever been one thing: love. And it's always ever going to be love. When we experience unconditional, universal love, there isn't room for anything else. There's no room for insecurities. There's no room for any of the problems. There's no room for jealousy. There's no room for anger. No room for hatred. No room for terror. Just kindness and understanding. I love talking about love. I love sharing love. I love everybody in this room right now, even though I can't see you. I love everybody that's going to watch this video.
Beautiful, Jim.
Thanks, Hafiz. You know, those early days that we shared with Sid, there was so much love in the community. It didn't matter who you were, what had gone on when you arrived on the island, on your search, on your journeys. It was like being taken into a big family. a loving, kind, welcoming, unconditional, loving group of people. And here we are all these years later, and the incredible power of the privileged days that we had is the most important thing in any of our lives. I was on the phone a couple days ago to a lady in her early 90s, and she's going through the things that we, those things that happen as you're aging and things are changing. But she is in a beautiful place. She is able to cope with losing her ability to come on Zoom. Her eyesight is fading. She's in a lot of pain, bone on her hip, and she's waiting for an operation. She's starting to be forgetful, and yet she's in a happy place. And we talked about the old days, and she lit up and reaffirmed how wonderful they were and the beautiful gifts that she lives by still yet. She's not living in the past. That's no good. But she values the beautiful times and the incredible growth in consciousness that was happening at that point. And I found, since I've been sharing full out, full bore, my level of consciousness has been skyrocketing. Another gift from Mr. Banks. I love it. I live an incredible life. I've got an incredible wife. I have everything. And this 3P community that I'm interacting with now, we are all very blessed to be discovering deeper and deeper levels of consciousness in this particular strata of humanity. So two other keywords come to mind. Gratitude, you can't beat it. It's love. Humility. It's an incredible gift. It's a signpost for redirection into deeper realms. I hate to break the silence to talk about the silence, but I'm going to do it anyway. Just on one other little memory. We were in Vancouver. Sid was about to make a talk. We were all up in a hotel room together. About half a dozen of us, Sid and Barb. The energy was palpable. There was sunset, that kind of light coming through. And it went silent. We were just learning about silence. And we looked at Sid. And he started to glow. We all saw it. He was beaming. He loved sharing. He loved talking. It was so wonderful for him to have gone gone through the part where nobody could hear him, through the part where people's lives were changing, right there. Our lives were changing. So I could just sit here, but we've got to move on to a couple other things. And I'm wondering if there are any questions or comments.
All right, wonderful. Okay, if anybody has any question, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
I have to go in a few minutes, but when you were talking, Jim, about levels of consciousness, what came to me is a lot of times in the psychological world, we equate levels of consciousness to feeling good and feeling bad. And that's often been the interpretation of it. But the two stories from Sid, one that everybody's heard and one that I don't think anyone has ever heard. And when Sid asked me, and he's asked other people who, in Second Chance, which one is him? He said, I said to him, well, of course, you're Mama Leela. But he said very clearly that he was all three of those people.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that was a huge revelation, because I have a tendency to think of levels of consciousness as Sid's enlightened perfection and always in that state. But as we both know, he was a very ordinary man. And he also was a man who would hit that supernatural state of consciousness. And that was important. But one time when I was with him, Jim, he described something different. He described 3 different levels of the highest level of consciousness.
Really?
And the first state, he said, is knowing. I know. And the second state he talked about was being in that state. And then the third state, I can't remember the word he used, but he says, I can't describe it. It's impossible to describe. And the only thing that comes to my mind is oneness, being in the state of being in the state. Being is sort of like being in a state where you're still aware of yourself as being part of the world.
Yes.
But the third one, which of course I really don't, I have experienced something of that, but not quite what he has. And so I think when we're talking about levels of consciousness, we're not only talking about bummed out and feeling great.
Right.
We're talking about different levels of rising into the superlative or the oneness of life, where the unlimited potential of who we are is released, rather than dealing with.
Oh, yeah. That sounds right on here.
Yeah, that's wonderful. First of all, we know, then we become. The last, I don't know what to call it, and so, like, we are not even aware of the word. Beautiful. Thank you very much, Harry. All right. Anybody else? Okay, if you have any question, feel free to ask by unmuting yourself. And if you want to just type a question on the chat, you can do so. Jim, I would like to ask you a question that is often asked in the books of spirituality, and that is, who am I?
Yeah, I'm on. I don't know what I'm going to say, but I'm on. So the question was, who am I? Oh, yeah. I never did discover who I was. When I was younger, that was very important. But now, honestly, it doesn't matter. You're already who you are, and there's nothing more to sort of prove or find out about. Yeah, it's like a sense of it. Yeah, who am I? Huh? It's really interesting.
Well, we're all unique, Hafiz. That is a fact, and we seem to be operating. Our soul is connected to the greater, and our manifestation of it is who we are. We're all one. We're all the same, and yet we are all unique. And that's part of our game of discovery. You know, as we're playing out life, is one way of describing why we're here. You know, is I've heard it said this way. I'm not sure if it was Sid, but um, it's all a game, and the name of the game is go find yourself. So that's the exploration that we take through life, and we have our various experiences, and as we grow, we have the opportunity to learn more about who we are as we live through our various choices that come to us, the various challenges that life presents. But it's unanswerable except by each individual as they're discovering who they are, and even that is changing. We have our core, we have our essence, we have our soul, and how we that's our deepest guide in working through life, and we're ever changing. And I believe that we are changing to being more loving as we discover who we are. We are love, but we don't know it, and that's understandable. That's how it goes. Depending on the level that we enter, a lifetime. That's where we start, and we have our unique circumstances. And you might look at dear Liza, that character was given a life that should have been a life of struggle, but because of who she was, the level that she entered, the realm in, she was a beautiful, wise human being. So we are not our circumstances. We are who we are in our circumstances, and how we deal with what's coming, and our level of understanding, and our you could be in a level of fear, or you can be in a level of love and security. And that is the closest thing to defining who a person is, according to my own experience.
Wonderful. All right. Before I ask others to ask questions, I also have one more question. That is, where was I before I was here?
Well, I can give you the simple answer. I'm talking over my head when I do it, but you and I and everyone appear out of the formless, and we disappear into the formless. But we maintain our. Again, I'm just talking here. I have not experienced it in the way Sid has, but I would say we maintain our soul.
Beautiful. And what is my purpose in this life?
The purpose in this life is to grow in consciousness. That's why we're here. We're here to grow in consciousness, carry out our journey toward them. We will be there. We will reach it. We will realize it. But I don't think I'll be there in this lifetime. It's possible. Because as Sid said, we're all living in the middle of enlightenment, but we don't know it.
Beautiful. I've got one last question, that is, why do people fight? Why are there wars, murders, killing? Why is there even grief or sorrow?
We want, if we have any hopes of a better world, it has to be in raising the consciousness of humanity. And all that we can do in that is live in understanding and raise our own level of love. And that will affect others. Now, it seems like, oh, yeah, that's impossible. Really, it's not. But as you're living in a level of love, then you will not be interested in war. You will not be interested in anger. You will not be interested in taking lives. So we have things happening now. Curriculum is being developed for schools so that the children can be helped to understand the common, happy way to live, the kind way to live, the power of kindness, the power of being happy, understanding the power of thought, which is our creative process. And as we do that, it takes a generation or two, or not. I don't know how fast you can put this, especially in our days of technology, but which is, we have no idea where that is going. But yeah, the consciousness grows individual by individual. So many people that are thinking about conflict in some way or another, they need to keep their level of understanding and love for everyone. They need we need to keep recognizing the innocence and choose peace, happiness, kindness, understanding for ourselves.
Wonderful. Jokam has asked a very nice question, that is, are we living as humans or through humans?
We are humans. We are part of humanity. We're living according to the three principles of mind, consciousness, and thought. And as Sid expressed that, it was all thinking beings. So we are thinking beings, is the closest I can take a stab at answering that question. We are feeling beings. That's all I got on that.
Wonderful. All right. Wendy, Davy, would you like to add something?
Hi, Karen.
Hello.
Hi, Jim. It's Wendy Davey. Hi
Hi.
there. You can't see me. Thank you for this. It's beautiful. The space you create, the way you share, the feeling you bring to the room. If people come into this session with an offset feeling, they certainly are able to settle that when they come into the room with you, because you bring peace. I love the way you pause and have silences. A lot of people don't feel confident about doing that, and it's a beautiful way to understand and share. What Sid wanted to share is to trust in those pauses and the silences. It's beautiful. If I had an answer myself to who am I, it would be I am enough.
That's beautiful, Wendy.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
And thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
Those are beautiful words. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much. Thank you for being here. Your presence contributes to that thing.
All right. Anybody with any question or something to add?
Yes,
Yes,
Jim,
Mike.
hi. Just following on from what Harry said about levels of consciousness, when you were speaking fairly early on, what struck me, or what I was hearing in what you were saying, was that as we rise in level, we're deepening our connection to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And as we lower in level, we're doing the opposite, if you like, or we're sinking, or we're narrowing our experience into the personal mind.
I think that's dead on.
I mean, that's kind of what I felt, and so to me, it feels very neutral. It doesn't feel.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel. You know, the idea of higher and lower. You know, one sounds better,
Mm-hmm.
or has a. You know, but when I see it as just. You know, if I'm going in a good direction, it feels better. If I'm going in the other direction, all that's happening is like my aperture is closing,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just going into my personal mind, and there's infinite possibilities of getting lost in there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Beautiful metaphors, Mick.
Yeah.
Very, very, very wise. I think you're right on. And thanks.
Well, thank you. Thank you for exactly as Wendy said. You know, the space you lead us to is very beautiful.
Well, we all do it. I do have a role in it. That's the way it's set up. But I appreciate everybody's heartfelt presence in the room. Yeah, you know, it really is a contribution. It's a permission. So thanks to everyone, and Mick, I've loved getting to know you through Heartfelt Zoom. You're a great person, a great guy, and I was delighted to see that you were in the room.
So, hi, Jim and room, and Karen. When you were asking who am I, it seemed to me that what I'm experiencing more of an energy, and the energy of the three principles. so that I really am divine mind, divine consciousness, and divine thought.
Beautiful.
And I was back, well, I was way back in 1975 when I first heard Sid, and Jim was, and his wife, first wife who died, Pam, were really beautiful people. And just as he was saying, and really sharing with love, and really sharing the feeling of what was being shared. And that was what struck me the most, the feeling, beautiful feeling that was
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll never forget that Christmas we spent together.
That was the Christmas what you were talking about when I remember looking into your third child's eyes and seeing the divine because the baby had just come home from the hospital.
Yes.
And experience that beautiful sense of beyond. And I really loved what Mick was saying there about connecting to mind, to divine mind, that sense. It was a beautiful statement too. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Amber. All right. So, anybody else with any question or something to add? Okay. All right. Jim, I want to tell you that we have people from India and Australia. So in India, it's around midnight, 12:39, and in Australia, it's around 5 in the morning. So I want to thank all the people who have made it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much, folks. You're really going the extra mile on that.
All right. So we've got a question from Divyesh. He says, "What can the principles say about darker sides of our nature as they get revealed over time? Is that awareness of a dark aspect arise in consciousness, and how do you integrate this into our bridge?"
Being. Sorry, spelling mistake.
Being. Okay, that's being. Jim, did you get the question, or should I repeat it?
I think I have it. Really, the three principles apply to the whole thing, the whole package of life. They work both ways. And the negative thinking will create negative feelings. We can convince ourselves into paranoia. We can convince ourselves into all kinds of what you might describe as the darker feelings. The key is knowing that that's where it's coming from, and that we are doing that thinking, that the feelings that are present are the wrong feelings, and should not be given the energy, because that is not who we are. We are the opposite. That doesn't mean we can't think ourselves in another direction, but there's nothing good can come from it, except realizing the verification of the power of thought, and then using that power of thought wisely rather than unwisely. And having come to that realization, forgive yourself for acting with a lack of understanding, and proceed in life without doing it. If you find it occurring again, drop it again. Don't go there. That's it. Don't go there. If you want to gain in consciousness, it won't be found there.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Jim and Carl.
Yeah.
And
All right. Thank you very much, Devesh. Now we have our last question from Thomas. He says, "Why do we lose hope?"
we've forgotten who we are when we lose hope. If you're in a position to be helping a client, trying to guide them to hope is essential. We need hope. We want hope. We're missing love. There's always room for hope. If we don't have it, we've forgotten it. But, you know, as to why, getting caught in the outside is why. Going inside and realizing the illusionary qualities of life, that hopelessness is, you know, we can validate it with the wrong thinking, but we're just damaging. It's like self-damage to have it persisting. It's being done in innocence. It's being done because the individuals involved have forgotten, have lost their way, and have forgotten who they really are. They may be thinking of themselves as damaged goods. They're not. That's wrong thinking. We're all perfect. We all have everything that we need. We're all on the verge, one thought away from hope. Hope is just a beautiful thought that allows you to calm down and to give you something to work towards in life and to manifest success. We need hope. Everybody needs hope. So give yourself the gift of hope. Just empower yourselves. Empower ourselves. I'm sure I've had moments of why me, and I don't know how to get out of this. We all taste it, and part of the reason that we're doing that is so that we can have compassion. But if someone is hopeless and you're in a position to help, give them hope, give them love. You grow by doing so, and you need to direct them to health.
Wonderful. All right. So now I would like to ask Jen to tell us something about Trima and then play her tapes.
Just give me a second to get the thing fired up here.
All right. Take your time, Jen.
All right. There was only one little comment I wanted to make, which I didn't feel that I emphasized last week well enough. And that was the esteem that Sid held her in. And when she was, having already made this tape, when she was very close to death, within days, a message went out, and I'm not sure how, and I'm not even sure exactly where Sid was, but I believe that he was at home on Salt Spring Island, and quite likely it was her husband who made the call, because he had called others to let them know that it was a weekend. She might not make it through the weekend, and Sid and Judy left Salt Spring, which would have meant ferries, or I would think a plane to Vancouver, and then another, international flight. You know what that can be like. You're waiting and for hours before you going through customs, and then you're into a 5-6 hour flight. from Kahului, from Vancouver to Kahului on Maui, and then the rest. And that's the regard he held, the love that he held for Dreama. He came on a Friday night. That was the night I described last week, where we got a call from Dreama that Sid and Judy were there, and we were invited over for supper. But that's the part I may have glossed over, or people might have thought that Sid was still on Maui or something like this. No, he dropped everything to be with Dreama that one last time. And that was the Friday night, and she passed on Monday. So she was well loved by Sid Banks. And now I'm going to punch the button, and we're going to hear chapter 4 of Dreama's story, and it starts to get into her personal nursing and her relationship with her mother. So listen to this. This is a beautiful, beautiful tape.
Applications on a personal level. I'd like to share with you how I evolved from seeing my patients as the open heart or the kidney transplant to beautiful human beings that I had the privilege to care for. On the surface, I may not have looked different, but the change or shift came from the inside. It allowed my heart to open as it had been in the first few years of nursing, when I felt it was a privilege just to be taking care of the patients that I did. This change allowed me to see my nursing duties as vehicles that allowed me to spend time with my patients so that I could connect and help them, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. And by spiritually, I'm not referring to any religion, but a connection with that innate part that is the source of inner wisdom, strength, and well-being in human beings. This is done through a feeling, and it's impossible to be consistent if you do not have an understanding of where that feeling comes from or how it's covered up. I'd like to take you back in time to the late 70s. I was working in a VA center in Miami. Myself and another nurse were the infection control nurses for this medical center that had about 750 beds. So we had a big job. I was divorced with a son. My father had just died. My nephew had just been diagnosed with a congenital heart defect, the same condition as my sister. My sister was still debating whether she should have surgery. I worked with a girl who was divorced and had a son and her own set of problems. We took turns sharing our stories of woe between the two of us. We had plenty of them. And every other day we took turns crying. My busiest unit was the surgical intensive care. I was very familiar with the staff. I'd worked there for 6 years prior to my current job, and I had just returned from vacation. I'd been off for a whole month. There was always a lot of stress and activity on the unit and friction. Many of the nurses were trying to outdo each other, kind of a top dog syndrome rather than working together. I walked into the unit and there was something very different about the feeling there. The feeling was as tangible as the floor I was walking on. At first, I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was, but I saw everybody was smiling. They were getting along. That was unusual. They were really enjoying what they were doing. They were connected with their patients. My mind started to question what had occurred. And of course, I looked at all the outside things. Maybe they'd gotten a raise. Or maybe that battle axe of a supervisor had finally quit. Maybe they all fell in love. My mind was going, what could have changed? I pulled my friend aside because I knew she had leveled with me. We were very close, and I said, let's have a cup of coffee. I only waited to ask her what had happened. When I did, she assured me that none of the things that I gave credit for created the change in the feeling and behavior of the staff. She looked at me almost embarrassed as she said, we just started to learn how not to use our thinking against ourselves. I said, what? She said, We are learning how our thinking works to create our feelings of stress, and we have the freedom to change our thinking and experience. Well, I didn't know what she was talking about, but it was obvious that it made a difference in their nursing care. Plus, they were having a good time at their job. I mean, a couple of them were even singing to the intubated patients they had. Well, I'm not stupid. I also wanted to learn what they were learning. At first, as I listened about the principles, I wasn't able to articulate what they were trying to say, but I did feel better. And I realized that was a new way to learn. You don't worry about the words. You listen for a feeling. It's like listening to classical music. If you sit and analyze all the notes, you miss the essence behind them. So I learned to do that. And as I listened, I felt a little calmer, a little less anxious, a little more peaceful, more hopeful. And I started to see there was a connection between my thinking and my experience. I realized I could change my experience by changing my thinking. So now I could see what had happened in my friends. The change I had seen occurred from the inside, or out of a shift in their level of understanding or consciousness. The circumstances in my own life were the same. I was still divorced. I still had the same set of situations to deal with at home and at work, but my experience was totally different. My family, especially my mom, noticed the change in me. I no longer played the negativity game. Even though the change was positive, it made her concerned about me. She loved me very much and felt the need to see for herself what was going on. My mom hated to fly, so coming from West Virginia to Florida to see me was a real act of love. It just so happened that the time she chose to come, Sid Banks was having a seminar. She was very eager to check things out. That day, she got more than she bargained for. I was amazed that she was so open and touched. After the seminar, there was a gentleness and softness that I hadn't seen in her for a long time. I cannot tell you how wonderful I felt seeing the shift in her. The change did not stop when she left. She continued listening to tapes and reading Sid's work. We talked on the phone a lot, and I felt as though I had to get to know her all over again. She lost weight, went back to school, and was seen as a bright ray of light in the community. She taught me that anyone could change, regardless of age or years of bad habits. I felt very grateful for both of us. As a healthcare provider, the closer we are to someone, the more vulnerable we are trying to give care. Sometimes we lose our balance and are out of touch with our inner wisdom, which we have when we are dealing with patients that are not connected with us via family and familiarity. As a nurse, my biggest fear was that if my family became ill or needed my help, I wouldn't be able to help them due to my other family and job obligations. It just so happened it was mid-February, and I almost had my bags packed as I was moving to another city. The reason for the relocation was a new job. I'd be working with a psychiatrist as a mental health counselor using the principles of mind, consciousness, and thought. Although I knew better, my insecurity caused me to spend many hours of thought trying to figure out the future. Would I like the new town? Could I do my new job? How would I get along with my new boss? And so on and so on. The phone rang as I was closing my last suitcase. It was my mom. Not to worry, she said, but tomorrow I'm going for a CAT scan to check out those headaches I've been having. Not to worry. As soon as I hung up the phone, I started making arrangements to fly back home. After traveling for almost 8 hours to West Virginia, I got to the hospital just as the doctor was telling my mom that she had 6 brain tumors and a large tumor in her lungs. We both hardly got our breath when he decided to keep her for further tests. It was late by the time I finally got her settled in her room and I got a ride home. When I finally got to bed, I had a lot of thoughts, most of them based in fear. But there was a part of me that was really connected to my inner wisdom. a part that realized I couldn't contaminate my mom. I had to drop any thoughts of fear and insecurity so that I could help her to the best of my ability and to make the time we had together wonderful. As I lay there, something happened. A shift occurred, a feeling that was very strong and solid, a calmness and peace of mind, a feeling that had been missing as I got lost in my worries about my new job. I lay there in awe. And then, for a few brief seconds, almost felt guilty for feeling so good after just admitting my mom to the hospital with cancer. Then I had an incredible insight. This is how we are meant to go through situations like this. That when we are in this state of consciousness, we are truly present and can better access our own innate wisdom and common sense to assist us through the most difficult situations. Wow, I experienced such relief. I really knew there was an inner strength and wisdom that would guide me through this, and I only had to be willing to do one thing to access it. I had to be prepared to drop any insecure thoughts when they got triggered. I stayed with my mom throughout the next 3 months. She remained ambulatory and alert until she died after a wonderful family picnic. I can't tell you what a loving and positive experience it was for both of us, and I'm grateful that I had the knowledge to go through it the way I did. Without this understanding, we would have spent this short time together in fear instead of love. I will always treasure that time and see it as very special because it was filled with love and had nothing to do with the fact that she was even going through cancer at the time. When she died, the minister shared how Mom had been depressed and hopeless after losing her husband. She had taught him how we can change our minds and have a different experience in life. He went on to talk about the impact she had had on others with her positivity. He stopped, looked at the congregation and said, "If any of you are feeling sad, you can choose to change now." I couldn't stop smiling. My mom told me she sure wanted to share what she had learned with her friend, the minister, and she did. Hope and applications to faith.
Sorry about that one.
All right. Thank you very much, Jim. It was wonderful. Okay. All right. So, does anybody have any question to ask about Dreamer, or to add something? All right.
Hi
Yeah.
there. I was just going to say how beautiful that was. That was such a beautiful story. So thank you very much for sharing that, James. And she's such an expressive and beautiful speaker and spirit. So thank you.
Thanks for mentioning that. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
All right. Anybody else? Maybe add something about Dreamer. Okay.
I'd like to say thank you for the whole session. It's been absolutely wonderful. I've loved the silence and I loved your sharing, James. And yeah, the story was beautiful. And I have a similar recollection of going through a cancer journey too. So yeah, the principles just made it so easy. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you for your sharing. And thank you, Karan, for holding the group.
Thank you very much, Verdi. All right, so it's not the end of the session. We have yet to play Sid's tip on feelings. All right, so last time, anybody else with any question about Dreamer or her life? All right, no one. Okay, so now I would like to play Sid's tip on feelings. On the episode number 1, we played part 1, and today we are going to play part 2.
Because it is. And it's the isness being released. Have you any idea how powerful that is? When the isness gets released. and starts explaining to men how their minds work. It's super powerful. It's super powerful. And the best thing about it is you don't have to understand what's happening. You don't have to understand the words, because you've already been explained it's impossible to understand. You've got to get the feeling, then the understanding comes. But the words mean nothing. And it's not a little secret riddle. If I listen to his words and they mean something else, what could they mean? That's trying to figure out the words in a puzzle, right? There's no puzzle. There's really no puzzle. If you just hear what I'm saying, you'll hear it. But you've got to hear the words without the analyzing or judging or trying to figure out. You must just go beyond the word. And that's the only way you can go beyond the word, is to see right through it. You must understand it, but then you don't have to go any further. So you're as far as you can go, you're there. Pretty tricky. And there's only one truth. And no matter what anybody says, this one truth will cure all things. Because this one truth is the way. It's the way to guide many, many people back to sanity, away from hell. And when I say hell, I mean a hell of a life, a tormented life, a sick life, an unhappy life. This is a way to take them back, by psychologically speaking from beyond the mind, beyond the understanding of the mind of mankind. It's not an insult to mankind, because it's my mind too. It's simply that the mind can't possibly comprehend how to lift a level of conscious state to find out what it's looking for. I know there's millions of methods, millions of ways, millions of ideas, but that's all in the illusion. You've got to step outside the illusion. You've got to step outside what the mind thinks. And what mind thinks is the illusion. See, if mankind knew how to fix his own problems, he would have done it a long time ago, and then we'd all be happy. But he can't. Can't possibly. There's only help from one way, and that's to go inside to that superconscious state that exists inside yourself. And release it. Don't talk about it. It's of no value to talk about it. You can talk about it till you're blue in the face. You've got to release it. When you find it and you start talking about it and you don't have the feeling, you haven't got it. You've only half got it. But you won't release it. It's like having a beautiful big wild stallion caught up in a small pen, and outside there's a big pasture, and it's yours, and you won't let it go. And it's not until you let it go, all of a sudden you realize there's a big corral all around all that big beautiful pasture. It never gets away. It can't get away. Now let it go. And that's what you've got to do. Release it. But just become happy. That's all I'm asking you to do. But you can't be happy all the time. You'd have to be really sick. Somebody once said to me, I can see being happy maybe once a month, but what you're talking about is ridiculous, you know. It's really neat, because once you start finding knowledge, you start to realize what you haven't given yourself all those years. Then all of a sudden you're giving it to yourself. You're giving yourself all those beautiful feelings that never existed before. You realize you robbed yourself of those feelings, which in turn created all that knowledge. You robbed yourself all your life because you didn't know what life was. But the second you find it, you just lay it on yourself. All those nice feelings, And all of a sudden it's a nice place. And all of a sudden the knowledge comes in with the feelings telling you exactly what's going on. Like you start to see with clarity that when people play their little game, then another little person plays a little game. And by God, we're all playing the same game. And as you start to realize that, then all of a sudden you look inside and you say, me too. That's a toughie. Me too, But not me too bad, because as you start to see life as a little game, and you see everybody doing it to each other, doing it to themselves, no matter what they're doing it to each other and doing it to themselves, So you get away from that and you watch all this circus. Then, of course, this is where the cosmic humor comes in, because it's a circus. There's only one way you can find it is now. Because if you ever truly find it, you realize there never was any other time but now. That time is only an illusion. It's an illusion to play the game of life. So we play it. But to find the game of life, you've got to go beyond that playing stage to find the true reality, so that you can find out how it works and play it better. Happier. There's more feelings. There's more seeing rather than acting. Sit back and enjoy it. But still do whatever you've been doing. It's just a conscious change. It's a state of consciousness that changes. Nothing else. Negativity creates that feeling that you don't want. It's a feeling of, it's a horrible feeling. So you got to get rid of that horrible feeling. So what you do is you learn to see clearer, see life clearer. And as this truth starts to unfold, you'll see, once again, nicer feelings. And it's those nice feelings that will bring you all the knowledge that you seek. And you can't explain, I swear. If you try, you're just doing a silly thing. You can't explain people their problems. You can only tell them facts, conscious facts. And if they hear the conscious fact, the problem will vanish. If you tell somebody the problem, all you're doing is convincing them they've got the problem. And the second they see truth, the problem will vanish, because they'll realize it's just the illusion. It wasn't true. They just thought that way. And it's our thinking mind that gets us in trouble. We've got to take this thinking mind of ours and clean it up. And the way you clean it up, you take all the negative thoughts and feelings and you get rid of them. And it leaves good feelings, which in turn take you to what you're looking for. And as you start to get the feelings, this alone will bring you the knowledge how to get more. If you unload it. You can only take so much and you can't take any more. You're filled to the brim and you've got to give it out. And if you want to give it out, give it to yourself. I mean it. Give it to yourself. I don't care where you spill it over. Give it to yourself. All you're doing is giving yourself a beautiful feeling by realizing the knowledge that's inside you. You're giving it to yourself, and I guarantee you, the second you give it to yourself, you're going to give it to somebody else. You can't help it, because just being you in that state of good feeling, you'll be giving something to somebody else, a beautiful feeling. Plus, with it comes the knowledge that you're looking for. So it's just everlasting, eh? You throw it away and it's there. You can't throw it away. It's not like a boomerang, eh? A boomerang might not come back, eh? Well, this is different, because there's nowhere to go. There's nothing thrown. There's nothing thrown. There's nowhere to go. It's already there. You've already got it. And you only pretend, eh? You only go through the pretense of not having it. And all we're doing is sort of leading you along the path towards those feelings. It changes life entirely. Not in the belief system, eh? But in the actual fact system. In actual fact, the fact system is living in a state of meditation. Not sitting looking for it, but actually living in the state of meditation. That's the fact system, because from there everything is a fact, because it's truth, because the mind isn't in the way. And this is what everybody's searching for, is the state of meditation. But once again, we go the opposite way to try and find it, because we pack our minds with more information to get to the state of meditation. Or try to tranquilize our mind. We read more. Or we find more. Or we argue. Or we do something and get more of what we don't want. And we don't see it. It's really simple when it's put before your eyes. You can see it. But we all go the opposite way. Eh? We all go the opposite way. So I know I'm grateful that I found out what I found out. So, like, it's close to Thanksgiving, yeah, that's it. For sure. I was off track of time. Why don't we just have a break, eh?
All right. It was wonderful. I loved it. I loved it. Okay, before we go, I would like to share something. Wendy's asking, where is this recording from?
I can't answer that question. It was one of the early tapes is all I can say. I don't know the exact date on that tape. And I don't know where it was recorded. So I'm sorry. Yeah, obviously it's an early tape is all I can relate there.
All right. But if anybody wants these tapes, I have a huge collection. I just got it from Mike. Thank you very much, Mike, for that. Okay, Jim, I would like to share something from Joachim. Since we were talking about sharing, here's something beautiful. So Joachim says, I just want to share that I just told a girl today who was in a dark place that she isn't broken and that there's nothing wrong with her and that she had just gotten lost in her way because of her thinking. So she said that it was just what she wanted to hear.
Very nice. Thanks so much for sharing that. And thanks to everybody in the room for being here. It's been wonderful to have this opportunity to share. So you provide it, and I am grateful. I'm sure Curran is. And please continue, come back again next Sunday. We'd love to have you again sharing with us. And it's a wonderful opportunity. That's, I can't emphasize that enough. I just love it personally. So have a great week.
Thank you, Jim and Karen. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, guys, so that's the end of the show number 2, Sharing Consciousness. I want to thank you all for coming here, and thanks a lot. I'll be talking to you in episode number 3, Sharing Thought. Thank you very much. Aloha.